So I want to introduce Keith Girouard and Nancy Shulman from the Mass Small Business Development Center, the regional office in Pittsfield. And the Mass Small Business Development Center has been instrumental in helping us shape this program, and especially that business planning worksheet that you have at the back of your packet. So Keith and I have worked a lot on that and refined it since last year, and we're really grateful for their help and partnership. And so they're going to basically take over today, teaching the class, and take us all through that business planning worksheet. And so I hope you'll take notes. You can use that worksheet to take notes as we go through. And I have lots of extra paper if you want to use that to add to your notes. And I think that's it. Thanks so much for coming.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us. Well, we're very excited to be here. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to be here and to talk with you and to share as best as we can our information, and hopefully for you to be able to share your ideas and thoughts with us. We are about helping small businesses start, grow, and develop, and what a great opportunity it is to be working with you who are at various stages in terms of considering starting a business, and hopefully we can help with the information that today, and well as in other days, with that going along. So in a few minutes I'm going to ask you if you could introduce yourself. I'm going to ask you just in one sentence, if you could, just to say the business idea that you're thinking about. That would be helpful. Okay, how does that sound? Is that something you're worth? Okay, so just all interest, and maybe a third thing would be is like what you would expect to get out of today. Okay, so right before we get started, what I'd like to do is introduce myself and offer Nancy an opportunity to introduce herself. As you heard prior to us getting together, we're the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network. Big long title, Berkshire Regional Office. Welcome everybody, and thank you for sharing. We appreciate that. It helps us understand who's in the room and what might be of some interest, and we'll try, and we prepared some material, but we'll try to tailor it to you. Each of you have a packet of information, actually just 3 sheets. One's an evaluation sheet, which I'll go over in a little bit, and then you have 2 other sheets, which are really financial sheets, which Nancy will cover a little bit later. So here's our plan for today, okay? First is to talk about a couple of just sort of generalized topics, some of the fundamentals of what goes into a business. For example, talk a little bit about what is a business, and also what is money, and what is money in a business. Then we'd like to talk a little bit and offer opportunities for people to talk a little bit more in depth about what their business is, and get a sense of that as it applies to what is a business and how does money operate. And then we thought we would talk a little bit, well, how do you evaluate your idea? Okay, so I would imagine in this room there's at least a couple of people that have more than one business idea. Is that true? I've seen some head nodding. Okay. So whether you have one idea or you have a multiple of ideas, how do you determine which one you should go for? If you have more than one idea, and the idea that you have, how do you determine whether or not it's a viable idea, or start to determine? What are some of the criteria that you might want to look at? Okay, so that's what we're going to start with. Okay, how does that sound? And then Nancy's going to talk about, she's going to go specifically over your business plan worksheet that you have there, and she has an illustration that she's going to walk through, and give you sort of concrete examples of what might go in each of the sections there as we go through it. And then we'll talk a little bit about numbers, M-O-N-E-Y, money, and what does that mean and how does that work within a business, start to introduce that. There's a class later on in a few weeks that I'll be coming back for that will go into more detail about numbers and money, part of it, but we'll at least start the conversation today. Okay? How does that sound?
Very good.
Do we have agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Disagreement? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what is a business. What is a business, and is there a difference between a business and a hobby? Okay? So let's explore that a little bit. So a business, what's a business? Somebody want to offer some ideas? You're all thinking about starting a business, yes?
Perhaps it's something that involves consuming and producing, whereas a hobby would just involve consuming something that you like.
Well, that's interesting. Something that involves,
Consuming and producing, either a product or.
Can I dispute that?
okay, well, let's get some ideas down here and then let's talk a little bit. Let's do the evaluation after we do a little bit of brainstorming here. Consuming and producing? Okay. What else? Yes, all ideas are fair game, by the way. You say it has to do with giraffes, I'll put it out. It has to do with giraffes. Okay.
Well, at the end of the day, the company has to make money eventually.
Okay, so you need to make money. Okay. And hopefully enough of it, right? Okay, what else? I saw another hand. Is that it?
It has to be sustaining.
It has to sustain itself? And what, help us understand what you mean by that.
It has to be able to stay in business.
You have to stay in business. So the interest is not just starting a business, is keeping a business, is that
Yeah.
correct?
So it has to serve customers.
It has to serve customers. Okay, what else? Anything else? Is that it? Yes?
Well, a hobby you can kind of put down at any time, but a business needs constant involvement and
Constant
maybe
involvement.
more money put into it.
Thank you. And what do you mean when you, what comes to mind when you say constant involvement?
I don't know, you need to put in like work, maybe you have to create the product, you have to find ways to manufacture the product more efficiently or the service, and even like more capital or.
So there's a lot of just moving pieces there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And that's some of the things that perhaps is what goes into a business plan. You have to consider that kind of stuff. Okay, great. I thought I saw another hand.
Oh, I said it serve customers.
Serve customers, we're good on that then? How about, yes?
You have to treat your involvement as a job.
You have to treat it like a job. And what does that mean for, I mean, I have my idea about it, but I want to make sure it lines up with what you think.
Well, yeah, along with the whole hobby thing, you can't put it down. You have to show up every day and put in the time. And just because it's your business, it doesn't mean that you aren't responsible to and aren't responsible to other people involved with it.
Okay. Okay. So there's a commitment. Okay. All right, what else? Anything else? Yes?
Well, a lot of businesses are started off a hobby.
Okay, so it might start as a hobby interest?
Yes, and then turn into a business.
Can you give us an example of your thinking with that?
Well, like if you start as a hobby, taking pictures, being a photographer, and then it turns into a business where people are paying you for your pictures or paying you to take them at events.
Okay, so there's a real example
Or
of
if
like
you're-
where I'm doing something that I find interesting, that gives me pleasure, I do it as a hobby, and then somebody, what?
Starts to pay you,
Says, what? I like that, that's interesting
Yeah.
to me.
wants to consume it.
Okay, wants to consume it, okay, so we got consuming here. Or use. Okay, what else? Anything else? Okay,
A business is something that fulfills a demand. So a hobby is something you do for pleasure that doesn't necessarily need anybody outside of yourself, but a business needs to have a reason to be a business.
okay, needs to be average. Okay, I'm gonna pause here just for the sake of time. I'm sure there's probably a lot more ideas, and this is where I get to be dramatic. Okay, so business has essentially, I think, 3 components, right? You have to have a seller, right? Looking to sell something, and I can already see the experienced people starting to noodle this around. You have a seller, you have a buyer, and what happens?
There's a transaction.
There's a transaction. What's a part of that transaction?
Currency.
Currency, coin of the realm, money, M-O-N-E-Y. But why does the buyer buy?
They have a demand.
There's a demand, okay? All right, so who determines, who really is in charge of that transaction?
The buyer.
The buyer, why?
Because if they don't have a demand for it, if they don't want it, then
That's right.
you're not gonna make any money.
So the buyer has to have something that is of what? Value. In business terms, we sometimes refer to it as the value proposition, but it has to be something that is of value to the buyer. Would you believe that a lot of people start off thinking about a business, and people that even come, and Nancy, you can jump in and tell me if I'm wrong on this, come into our office, and it's basically a version of something like this. Help me sell what I want to offer. This is what I want to offer. This is what I want to do. Let's create a business plan. Let's create a marketing plan. Help me sell what I want to offer. What we try to do is we try to shift that around so that they understand it is not about what you want to offer and selling it so much, really. It's really about what people want to buy. Okay? Now, because people might want to buy a lot of useless plastic objects doesn't mean you have to sell that. But you do need to understand that basically the driver in this thing is really the what?
Customer.
The customer, the buyer. Okay? All right, so that kind of needs that is a subtle twist there, but is really important. So the emphasis is really not so much on creating a business of something that you want to do, although that could be a good starting point. It's really about looking out in the market and determining what people want to buy. It's not only what they want to buy, when they want to buy it, how they want to buy it, what price they want to pay for it. Okay? So it's not only what, it's how, it's when, it's how. It's the price. Okay, so there's a number of things. All right? And what's being exchanged in this business transaction is not just whatever it is I'm selling. So, say like I determined that people really want Sharpies, and they want them just like this. All right? And I'm going to sell these Sharpies, right? So if I said to you, what are you selling? What's your business about? And you say, well, it's selling Sharpies. Not really, okay? Because you're also selling, it's time, trust, and money. All right? So it's not just what the buyer is giving you is not just money, it's their time and their trust. Does that make sense? And guess what's happened with the internet and globalization, right? They created this dynamic, which is what we refer to as hyper-convenience, right? How many people have bought something online? Okay, everybody, right? Now, have you had the experience that you went to a site and you had to click a couple of extra times and you said, this is crazy, I'm out of here, right? Have you abandoned sites because you had to click a couple extra times? No, you don't have to, nobody's admitting it, but I'm pretty sure you probably done, right? Okay, and how much time did that site take from you? 3, 4, 5, 8 extra seconds? Can you see how the expectation has changed and shifted? First of all, it was just subtle and it was isolated, but now it's becoming more global. All right, so you really need to think about things being convenient and hyper-convenience. Okay? So is there any questions about starting to think about what a business is? Or any additional thoughts about, in addition to these kinds of things? Did we cover that stuff? Okay. Everyone's quiet all of a sudden. All right. So yeah, fulfills a demand, which is very interesting. I would expand that a bit and say a need, want, desire, or aspiration for. Okay? It's a need, a want, a desire, or aspiration for. I don't need a book. Maybe you do, but probably I don't need a book. Why would I buy a book? Well, probably nobody buys books now, but I don't. Why would I buy something that does that make sense? Right? Like for you guys, what you're potentially offering in that app, I don't really need it. I may want it, I may desire it, but it probably has to do something with aspiration. I aspire to be something, right? That's kind of important because you need to understand a little bit about what are the motivating factors, motivating the buyer. Okay? So I'm going to pause for a second and look for some input, particularly from the people who have had businesses or have businesses. What do you think about that?
It's you're filling not only needs but wants and desires.
Yeah, yeah, and that's important. You know, because what's becoming more and more important is that you understand customer buying behavior, and you understand more and more about the customer's mindset in terms of buying. Everyone hear of Abraham Maslow, the psychologist?
Oh, maybe.
Hierarchy of needs, people refer to, right? They talk about a hierarchy of needs. And I don't want to get too much into it, so I don't want to take too much time, but actually it's not his hierarchy of needs, it's actually his theory of self-actualization. But basically he says that people are primarily motivated by their lowest unmet need. All right? So if you're starving and I offer you a book, to buy a book, you're not going to be interested in buying, you just give me a sandwich or give me something to eat, right? You're motivated by that. So it's really important that as an exercise, as a seller or something, that you might want to think a little bit about what's the primary motivating factor of your customer. Okay?
You could think of Hosta Hill, like if you want an example, you could figure out what is the need they're meeting, what's the want, desire. Like they might have multiple things. They might be meeting your need to eat something good, but also a want to support a local business, a desire to eat healthy food, or an aspiration to eat crimson food or something.
Okay.
Or a desire to smell the sauerkraut and
In
then
your
be
fridge.
motivated to buy it.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to move along. There's a lot of different pieces of what you just said that we could tease out, but I want, for sake of time, we move along. I don't know how we're doing here for time, but probably we're kind of messed up here. So I want to talk a little bit about money, M-O-N-E-Y. What's money in a business? Or what's money to you?
That's how you get anything done.
Get something done. What else? What's money? Tell me, let's talk a little, just briefly about what money. Yes?
I guess it's a representation of value.
Representation of value. Okay. What else? What's money? Would you believe that people have like formulas in their head about money? Money equals,
Don't be shy.
yeah,
Shut up.
money equals
Happiness.
happiness. That's a classic, isn't it? If I had money, I'd be happy, right? Okay. What else might it equal?
Power,
Power,
success.
success, status, security, a lot of different things, okay? This goes on in people's heads. So would you believe that there are lots of variations of it, and some of the stuff is not very pretty in terms of what money equals, all right? We're not here to suggest to you that you need to change your personal values, beliefs, or patterns of behavior around money. But we are here to suggest that you think about it in a business. Because here's the thing, unless you intentionally think about it and act upon it, your personal values, family history, behaviors, so forth and so on that you handle around money will automatically happen in your business, and it can be disastrous, all right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so you're saying, okay, I can't use that, what can I use? I learned long ago, if you're going to ask people to take something away, you have to offer something in its place. So I'm going to offer you this. And I know you're saying like, well, does this have to do with business planning? It's very, very important. And Nancy, I don't know about you in terms of your experiences, but I've seen great ideas and really good people, and the whole thing goes kaputski because people had really strange ideas and really strange behaviors around money.
We have a number of clients who come in and unfortunately don't come back for that very reason.
Okay. All right. So here's the replacement for money in a business. Money is a tool. Okay? Money is a tool in business. And it's in your best interest, if you're going to be successful in business, to know how to use that tool. And as you get more involved in money, and Nancy will talk a little bit later more about it, the more that you get involved with the money part of it, the more you realize that all money's not created equal. That's what I was going to say. But all money's not equal,
Depends
really.
on what country you're in.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of form it comes in. So there's money can be multiple tools, but essentially it's a tool. All right, everybody knows what a power saw is. Circular power saws, you know, right? Very powerful, right? Right. What if you gave that power saw to a toddler with it on? Oh, disastrous, right? Right? What if you gave it to a skilled person who knows how to use it? They'll build something, right? So here's the thing. It's in your best interest that you, in business, that you learn and that you feel comfortable and confident about knowing how to use that tool, all right? Money, we're taught. It does go out of this room, right? We're taught, really, to be consumers. and not really so much to be producers. All right? We're taught, and around money is to consume money, not really to produce it. All right? So that's a different change. I can see some people going, oh boy, I'm going to challenge him on that. And sure, feel free to challenge me on that. But so money, if money is a tool, then it provides, you don't want to consume it, you want to leverage it. It's like any other tool. If you use it well, it helps you build something, right? So some people, and my guess is if we went around the room, I won't do this, but if we went around the room and we asked you what's your thoughts and positions and value of debt, of loans, I think we'd probably be all over the place on that, right? There'll be some people that would say, I'm not going to go in debt. I am not going to have a loan. I'm just not going to do that, right? When I taught at the college level for a while, I had a very bright college student and we put business plans together. She had a remarkable plan for how to open this center, to working with people on it. And when we fleshed out the business plan, we fleshed out the financials, and I'm looking at it, she did, I should say, and I'm looking at it and I'm going like, you're getting your capital from basically a bootstrapping perspective in terms of off whatever the business is throwing off. Well, it's going to take you, if you do it that way, it's going to take you 5 or 7 years to have enough money to be able to make this major purchase and this acquisition that's essential for growing your business. Why don't you borrow the money, and 6 or 8 months later you could have that and you're making profits, right? If it's a good, absolutely positively refused because her family values was never to take on debt, never, ever to avoid. Now, I'm not here to say that you should take out loans or to go into debt. I'm saying that if money's a tool and you know how to use it, and there's an opportunity for you to leverage a loan or an investment, your investment or somebody else's investment, and it makes a lot of sense, then think of it as a tool. How does that sound to people? Some of you are looking very uncomfortable here. Did I just touch a button I shouldn't have touched?
You need an adequate supply of money through the course of your business to sustain it.
Absolutely, and that's, that could be referred to as working capital, all right? Or you might have what's called one-time only capital expenditures, which Nancy will talk a little bit about, startup expenses. That's kind of different approach. What else? Anything else about money? What do you think? I said bunch of stuff there. How does that relate to you, to your own, like, perspective or things that you'd be willing to share? Yes?
I think it makes things simpler if you throw out all those assumptions or kind of like personal thinking about money. It makes it simpler if you say, oh, it's just a tool. That means I can use it like any other tool. I have to learn how it works and use it appropriately, and that makes everything simpler.
Yes.
Because you don't have all that baggage attached.
Yes. And just like any powerful tool, you need to have discipline, right? Just go back to that power saw. You need to be disciplined and knowing that you have to stand a certain place, you have to hold it in a certain way, you have to have protective gear on it when you're cutting. You have to do that every time you use it, right? You have to be disciplined in that way. It's the same thing with money. You have to be disciplined, okay?
The other thing it makes me think of is that the money is not the goal, but it's the tool to a different goal. So you want to think about what your goal is, to have, maybe it is to have a successful business, and that means that you're making money, but it might also be doing something that you like, that you value, that the community values.
Okay. What else? Anything else around money before we move on to the last piece before? We're going to take a break in just a few minutes. You guys get stretched, and then when we come back, Nancy will take up the rest of the agenda. Okay? Anything
I
else?
just want to say that from my experience, my personal experience, what you've just said has exactly defined what has been holding me back.
Thank you. And our experience is you've got plenty of company. Plenty of company. People struggle with this a lot.
Yeah.
They really do. And it's actually very profound when people make that switch. When they switch from whatever personal values and behaviors and whatever it is that they've got in their head about what money is, and they switch it over in their business. Certainly in your personal side, we have no business being part of that. But in business, once you make that switch, it can be hugely helpful. it starts to change the color and the orientation of everything. So if you walk away with anything today, anything at all, Nancy probably would disagree because she's going to say some very important things. She said, you should probably walk away with what I'm going to say. But for me, from my piece, if you walk away with anything, it's walk away with an understanding and appreciation and an exploration about money as a tool in business and how you're going to use it and how you're going to learn how to use it. Okay?
If you don't follow that, it can be so stressful that it can destroy all of the other things that you want to do as far as projecting what you want to sell.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for offering that, Howard. A couple of you are partnering up, right? You have a couple partnerships going on. All right. Your partnerships, you know, if you want to advance your business idea, you really need to talk a little bit about money, about how that's going to work. All right. You don't have to like play it all the way out, but you need to talk a little bit about it and have some understanding about that and this idea that money is a tool. Okay. It's probably the number one reason, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, at least in my experience, probably one of the number one reasons why partners break up. They you know, it's usually fundamentally in terms of how the money is going to work and how it plays out, and how to spend the money, how to save the money, and what to use the money for. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is how do you evaluate a business idea? All right, you all have business ideas. Some of you have multiple ideas. How do you evaluate? I'm going to go in just about a little bit, 10 minutes ago. I'm supposed to stop about now, but because we started late, I'm going to go in just a few more minutes, okay? All right. How do you evaluate a business idea? There's people who are, okay, yes.
Make sure someone's gonna buy your product or
All right.
your service.
Make sure you have, and I'm just going to change it around, customers. All right? All right? I would just say it's not just customers that you need. You need to have enough customers to have a viable business, a sustainable business that came from over here, right? So if you got 2 or 3 customers, that's not necessarily a sustainable business, right? Okay? What else? Somebody else had it, yes?
Well, you have to go through each piece of your business. You have to make sure you have the income to start the business. You have to make sure you have the labor for your business, the machinery you might need, transportation costs, everything like that.
Okay. So you gave, just for the sake of just keeping it short, I'm going to say that you have to go through each piece of your what you're planning to do, right? The personnel, customers, how you're going to use the money, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What else? Yes.
Do you have something to sell?
Do you have to? Okay. You have to make sure that. Do you have something to sell? But also, more importantly, do you have customers who want to buy? Yes.
This might be a little bit superficial or outside of what you're asking.
All right,
but,
it's all good.
A lot of businesses rely on sort of dependence or an addiction to a product, whether it be a company like Facebook where they rely on dependence of getting people hooked on the actual checking something, or even more so than that, so like a cigarette company making their products highly addictive to keep people rebuying stuff.
Okay.
So
All
that's
right.
what you're going for with your app? Not the truth comes out.
So in other words, repetitive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, we could explore this more, but for sake of time, we'll just put it down. By the way, I'm not the greatest speller, so, sorry.
There's no spell check with
Yeah,
handwriting.
there's a repetitive piece there.
Mhm.
Okay, what else? I thought I saw another hand or two. Yes?
You could find the weak points in your idea.
Okay. You know, if you're going for investment and you go, actually, when we're dealing really at high-end investment stuff and everything, it's called fatal flaw. You want to declare the fatal flaws. That's weak point. Weak point is great. Weak point of points is good. Okay, you want to understand what the weak points are. All right, what else? All right. We probably could come up with some more, but for the sake of time, let me offer you a couple of things. I like to think of them as measuring sticks. Like a ruler, like measuring sticks. All right, so you have an idea, what are your measuring sticks that you're gonna measure that opportunity, right? So what are the rulers you're gonna take out? All right, maybe one ruler might be, how much money are you gonna make on this idea? How much money do you really think that this idea is gonna make? That's a measuring stick. So any idea you come up, you wanna take that measuring stick and you wanna measure it up and say, well, it only falls on the 5 line, or a 7 line, or 6 line. You wanna do that. There might be other measuring sticks, you know, how much time it'll take me to actually become, to start this business, right? Like, you guys that with the app, I hate to keep going back to it, but the app idea, there's a pretty big developmental time there. You know, so you really need to, if you really need to get a business off the ground and going on a short period of time, and you take out your measuring stick, how quickly can it happen? That one might be outside of it, or might be at the very top of it, but that's kind of important to know, right? All right, so here's the thing, is start to get this idea that not all priorities are created equal. What did he say? Not all priorities are created equal. It's really funny, when we sit down, I sit down with some businesses, and we talk, and they talk about a whole string of conditions that need to be met, or things that are important to them, and they all treat them the same. Have you guys experienced that? Has anybody else experienced that? You know, they treat it the same. You know, so one of the things that we try to do is say, okay, let's in terms of the idea or ideas that you have, which are the ones that and the conditions that the measuring sticks are not all created equal of themselves. Some are more important than others. So you have to think about what's most important for you. Okay, does that make sense?
Can you explain it a bit more?
Okay, let me see if I can give you an illustration. Let's just say that, okay, I have somebody that's interested in dog, actually has a business, and trying to make a determination about whether she should make a really big capital expenditure. They have a facility, they have a combination house and business, and they want to, they're thinking about, it's just too much stress having that all together in one, and they're thinking about separating. Well, when you ask her, when she starts talking about all the things that concern her, it's all the same. She's treating them all the same. You know, well, I have to get more dogs, and you know, there's money. There's some money involved, and I have to do marketing in a different way, and you know, she's treating all of these things the same measure. But if she listened to, and this is one of the things we do, we reflect back to people what we're hearing. When we reflect back to her, it's really clear there's 1 or 2 or 3 things that are the most important to her. And in fact, actually, in this case specifically, she's already made the decision, but she's kind of talking herself out of it. So when you're thinking about doing something, and you think about different things that are important to you, what I'm suggesting is they're not all the same important to you. There are some that are more important than others. All right, so that's called weight. They all have weighted values. They're not all the same value. So you have this sheet here. This sheet here is set up if you have multiple ideas. And it's just a simple way in which you can go and look at the various different, quote, these are, and Alice and I had a conversation, these are things that are generally, if you pick up any Start Your Own Business book, 3 or 4 Start Your Own Business books, and you look across them, this kind of stuff is in all of them in terms of how do I evaluate. All right, so it's pretty good stuff that you could kind of use. We've changed the language around a little bit to make it more useful, user-friendly to you, but essentially it is. So what I would suggest, if you have one idea, that you might want to go through and just see how it measures with these measuring sticks, or if you have multiple ideas, you can have up to 4. Just put the ideas right at the top and then just rate them. And basically what you do is rate them 1 to 3, and then you just add them up, the totals. And it's just a quick way to be able to just sort of evaluate the different ideas and or one idea. So before we take a break, are there any questions or comments that people want to make? Now, as a trained presenter, what you're taught is that you count to 10 internally. Don't you hate when you go, I'm stalling here. But don't you hate when a presenter asks you a question and waits like 2 seconds and then goes on, right? While you're thinking about a question. So I've gotten up to about 12 or 13 seconds at this point, so we're good. So any questions? What if you don't know the answer to some of these questions on this sheet? Like if you have a business idea, you put it down under 1, you have another one for number 2.
and you're going to rate them, but you don't know how to answer. one of
Are
them.
you available, Alice?
Yeah,
Would that be something that they could ask you?
yeah,
That help with?
totally.
Sometimes, and that's a great point, thanks for doing that. Sometimes we get locked in our own heads, and we need an external person to kind of help us unlock that. And Alice is a tremendous facilitator.
And you
I'm
can
sure
also
she-
put a question mark and say, oh, I need to learn more about this, maybe. It
Okay.
might take some more research. So, like if you're asking, is the overall industry of the business growing? And you're talking about event planning in the Berkshires. At this point, you might have no idea, right? So that might mean, okay, I'll put a question mark, and I better go back to that and research it a little bit before I can answer it.
And that's a great point, thanks for making that, because this also could be a useful tool to identify areas that you need to learn more about, or do research. Any other comments, questions before we take a break? Yes?
Well, earlier, almost right when you started, you were saying something, I think someone suggested that sort of customers are the main price setters in terms of demand. If they really want something, then they'll sort of be the decider of a price. But I was interested in, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but in sort of products that have definitive needs, per se, one that comes to mind is like a Plan B pregnancy pill, where sort of the producer can set any price they want because there's always going to be a constant demand for it. So sort of whatever price is, someone will be forced to buy it. Or
That's a good
other
point.
pharmaceuticals.
That's a good point. So there are exceptions. You know, any kind of general kind of rule, there are exceptions. That's a good point. So in terms of pricing, how pricing works, that in and of itself could be a mini module. Pricing things get kind of complicated, but that's a great point in terms of, it's not just a simple of demand, it is potentially demand and supply, but there's other complicating factors in terms of, you know, are you the dominant market?
Yeah.
You own a dominant piece of the market, you can control that. If people are in such distress, right, and such distress and or urgency that they'll pretty much be willing to pay
So,
it.
yeah.
That's kind of like when the government might get involved.
Yeah.
You know, if you take any economics,
Controlled drug pricing.
Mm-hmm.
We're one of the few
right, and
countries
then
that doesn't have.
monopolies and oligopolies, and,
Are there,
you know, the government will get involved.
There's such a
Hopefully.
thing too as perceived pricing.
Yes.
People might perceive that they're willing to spend much more than you're asking, and it would be good to know that before you set the
Yeah.
price.
Yeah, again, we could get into a lot of different things, what's the difference between a monopoly versus a commodity, and the monopoly and commodity continuum, and a lot of different things, but thanks, Howard, for that point. How about if we just take a break? If you have any questions, Nancy and I are around for a few minutes, just take like a 5-minute break, just kind of stand up, get some water.
So, what's a business plan? Why is it important? Why should we have one? Why should we not have one? Does anybody want to throw out any ideas about business plans?
Perhaps they can be used for potential investors.
Not only perhaps, but
Well,
most
yeah,
of them
maybe.
will require it. So yes, definitely.
It's a little bit like the GPS in the car. It's kind of good to know where you're going.
Exactly. See, now I would have set a road map. But yeah, GPS nowadays. But yeah, it tells you how to get from, you know, it helps you, doesn't tell you, it helps you because you're creating it, to get from point A to point Z in your business. And to add to what Luke said, if you're going to go for money, whether it's from a bank, an investor, a family, a friend, and I've had several people as clients who are getting money from family, they still want a business plan. People do not want to lend you or give you money unless they know what you're going to do with it. And that your plan is going to, at least on paper or on the screen, look like it's going to be successful. So you really need to create some form of a document that shows how you're getting from here to there for your business to succeed. So you've probably heard about business plans or read about business plans. There's lots of them out there. The internet has tons of business plans. Most of them are free, but lots of places will charge you for business plans, just the template. And now there are some new business plans out there. You've probably heard of like Growth Wheel or Lean Launch, things like that. Basically, all business plans have the same goal, and they pretty much have the same pieces. So whichever business plan you want to use, you're going to find that the stuff that we're going to discuss today will be part of those business plans. And we have our own kind of way of doing it, Keith and I, but people come in with business plans they've already created, and we can work with those as well.
Can I just add that I one time had an artist come in, and he did his business plan on a huge piece of cardboard, and it folded in half, and you know, we laugh because it's kind of funny and everything, right? And some of our colleagues would like dismiss that right away, but if you really looked at it, it had all the essential pieces of really what would make a really good plan for launching a business. So.
And people have done on napkins, I've heard too.
Yeah.
So the business plan is essentially two pieces of the business plan. One is called the narrative, and the other is called the financials. In the narrative, that's where you talk about the business, the market, how you're going to get to your customers, what your competition is, and so forth. The financials is what kind of money do you need? How much money do you need? And in your sheets, you might want to take these sheets out, by the way, because this is pretty much what I'm going to go over. Okay?
You can actually put notes down on them.
Yeah, there's
Use them
lines
as a,
there.
yeah, notebook.
So in the financials, it's what's your budget, what kind of money do you need up front to start this business, and then afterwards, your projections. How are you gonna show that you're gonna make money in the future? Where's your income coming from? How much is it gonna be? And what are your expenses? And at the end of the day, will your income be more than your expenses? Will you have a profit, in simple terms? Okay, any questions so far about the business plan that I've talked about? No? Okay. So, just to illustrate the purpose of this particular way of doing the business plan, I have created a business. It's more in my head, but maybe you'll play along with me. I happen to love coffee, although I drink mostly decaf. And I also like wine, although I drink mostly white. But there really isn't a business in this area that's a wine and a coffee bar. So I'm gonna set one up in Sheffield. When I go out at night, I don't always want wine, sometimes I want coffee. You like the idea? All right. So we're gonna do a business plan on a wine and coffee bar in Sheffield. Okay? And hopefully, we're gonna use local products. I know of at least 2 companies in the Berkshires that make coffee, or roast coffee, and one just outside of the Berkshires in Franklin County. And there are several places in the Berkshires that make wine. So we're going to have a local wine and coffee bar. Now, those of you who are under 21 are not gonna partake in the wine part, but you can have the coffee. All right. So what is my business? Who wants to say, right here, what's the business? And if you're wondering why I'm skipping this part, it's because usually we write the executive summary at the end, because that's the summary of your whole plan. So let's talk about the business. Who wants to tell me what my business is?
Selling wine and coffee.
Yes. Selling wine and coffee.
Legally.
Legally?
Some
Yeah.
food.
And some food. That's true, yeah. And what else?
What type of entity would you be? Type of business entity?
A restaurant.
No, legal business entity.
I don't know if
Well,
anybody knows.
we'll get into that too. There's different
A
kinds.
vendor and a hawker.
Yeah. Business entity has to do with the structure of how you structure a business, and I think you may be going through this later on. Is there a lawyer coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's different structures. It could be you could own it individually as what's called a sole proprietor. So you are the business. You equal the business. You could do it as a partnership, like maybe you guys are going to do. It's sort of like a sole proprietor, but divided in half. Or divided in another percentage. Maybe you're gonna have 40%, you're gonna have 60%. And then there are some other legal entities called LLC and Subchapter S and C Corp. And those we're not gonna cover today. But those are a little bit more advanced when your business grows. Most of you are probably gonna be sole proprietors or partnerships to start with. Come and visit us or see me later if you wanna talk further about that. Okay, so we know what I'm gonna sell, right? And do we know where I'm gonna be located? Well, yeah, I do. I have a shop I found. It's number 1234567 Main Street. Okay, so I'm gonna say where it is. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna be a sole proprietor. What else am I gonna say about the business?
So there's some cheat sheet questions underneath that section A, description of business. So try to answer some of these. Let's imagine. We already know what we're selling. Who are the suppliers, local and non?
Yep, we talked about that. I'm gonna get my coffee locally. And I can even state who I'm gonna get the coffee from, and the wine as well, and the pastries or baked goods, whatever else I'm gonna serve for food. Now, maybe not everything's gonna be local, but that's the gist of the business, is to make it a local wine and coffee bar in Sheffield. Okay. The other thing is, in the business, you're gonna maybe say why you're doing this business, okay? You know, you're doing it because you feel there's a need for a wine and coffee bar in Sheffield. It's a unique business, and there's a need that you're going to fill. Now, one thing I didn't mention that's pretty important, when you write your business plan, it's really recommended that you put it in the third person. You eliminate all the personal aspects of it. Because many people will come in with business plans and they're very excited about the product. And that's good, but you have to impart to the person you're going to show this to, the person besides yourself, that it is a business. It's not just a fun thing, or it's not just something you're excited about. It is a business. So we recommend that you put it in the third person. You talk about the business as Sheffield Wine and Coffee Bar, or Nancy Shulman, or the business, the restaurant, that sort of thing, instead of saying me, I, my, us, we. Okay?
So that's a requirement of the final product that you guys are writing at the end of the class. We don't want it to be, I am starting the business, this is what I'm calling, this is what I'm gonna do. It's gonna be written in the third person. So does everybody understand what the third person means?
And the reader will get a much better objective sense that it is, and you'll get credibility. When you start to personalize it, although there's an argument for certain parts of it, but if you start to personalize it, you potentially risk objectivity.
Okay. So we pretty much talked about the business. Any questions on what the business is? Anybody want to add anything to it? I know it's really hot in here, so if you're falling asleep, just give me a heads up. Okay, target market. What does a target market mean, first of all? Target market is what?
For people who
Who we're going to be selling to?
People who are going to be buying your product. Your audience. So in this case, who's my target market? Who's my market?
People who like coffee and wine.
Mm-hmm.
People who want to support the local economy.
Mm-hmm.
People who live around Sheffield.
Good point. And Keith will back me up on this, I'm a real bugaboo about research. When you're talking about your market in your business plan, you want to verify where you get that information from. Oh, yeah, people who like coffee, people who like wine, of course, yes. How many people? How many people are there in your market area? What is your market area? Well, we've got Sheffield, we've got Great Barrington, New Marlborough, Monterey, maybe we'll go up to Lenox, maybe we'll go down into Connecticut. Figure out what your market area is, and then do some research on how many people are in that market area in your age group. Okay, and my age group is mostly 21 and up. Although, you know, for the coffee, there will be some people who aren't 21. Where am I going to find this information? Well, first of all, the internet is fantastic. You can find so much, just Google it. Census Bureau. Census Bureau gives you information on the towns and cities in Massachusetts, so all over the country, but you can find that too. And you can extrapolate, which means that you can take the information that you have, let's say from the census, and then you can go online and look for studies, how many people drink coffee in the United States? How many people drink wine in the United States? And then you can take that percentage and then extrapolate how many people in your market area drink wine and drink coffee, based on that information. And I always recommend that you cite where you got that information from. Now, you might also get your information from asking around, you know? Do you think that you would go to this place if I set it up? You know, you can ask your friends and family, and in fact, probably a lot of you have already done that in the businesses that you're planning. You know, is this something that you would frequent? Is this something that you would buy? So that's kind of a lower level market research. The big guys pay lots of money to get studies done on market research. Will people buy Coca-Cola? Will people buy this, you know, new Nike product? That kind of thing. Pay a lot of money for that. You're not going to get into that. But it's probably a good idea to ask around people you know who are around the age of your market. And if your market's around your age, fine. In your situation, you want to work with schools, right? Who said they wanted to work with schools,
I did.
recycling? Okay,
Yes, yes.
all right. So you're going to ask around in the schools. Maybe the schools don't want it. Before you start trying to get all money and put all this business plan stuff together, you're going to want to find out, who are my customers? Are they? Is there a market out there for what I'm planning? Now, just because I like coffee and wine doesn't mean that there's going to be a viable market for my products and that I'll make money at it.
Can I just pop in a little bit?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, for some of our clients, the ones that have really serious propositions and we're going for it, we have access to specialized services and products we can do and help our clients do extensive market research. There's customized, there's template packets and that we can then customize. For example, what Nancy was referring to is ring analysis, which basically integrates with GPS and other ways what around demographics and other kinds of things, how many people are within certain kinds of distances. So like the question came up about, or the point came up about who might be my customers, people who are in and around Sheffield. Well, there's a way it actually kind of like you can do drive times and ring analysis. Anyway, those are more sophisticated kinds of things that can be done, but
Right.
for clients that we're working with on a
But if-
professional level.
But if you think about it, you could also create your own survey.
Okay.
I mean, there's
That's
tools
right.
like SurveyMonkey
Yeah.
that allow you to just create your own survey, and you could send it out through Facebook. You could send it out to people in your school, you know, in your own network, people you know, people you don't know.
That's a
So-
great idea for a low cost or no cost.
Yeah.
And in terms of, per se, our app, beta and alpha testing to get actual feedback on the product.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of big companies do that too.
So it's like a research project that you can design yourself to find out what you want to find out.
And the only one who's grading it initially is you. Later on, maybe the banks, but initially it's
You can stop
So-
people as well on the street. You can stand on the corner of Main and Railroad Street and ask people to give you 30 seconds to help you with a project that you're doing. And
Exactly.
people generally are very helpful.
Yeah. I actually got stopped one time in the airport by somebody who was doing market survey on her product. It's interesting.
Yeah, but again, when we're doing this professionally, that you just have to be aware that self-reporting is notoriously inaccurate. So what people say they're gonna do and what they do are very different. So when we're doing this professionally, when there's potentially a lot of money on the table, this, I think for what we're talking about is fine, but as far as like, if you're gonna be putting a lot of investment, time, energy, and money in something, then we go for more sophisticated tools and approaches, and self-report and self-surveys have what's called low predictive validity. They're not really very good measures of future behavior. But anyway, that's
Yeah, and you
another
could
side.
actually narrow it down too. Would you buy this product, and if so, at what cost? So you can get an idea, you know, if somebody says, well, I wouldn't pay more than $5 for it, and you really need to make $25 on the product, then you know if a lot of people come in and give you that feedback. Okay, is there any question on, the other thing I wanted to just add, besides the census, the chambers of commerce and tourist bureaus locally too have information that could be helpful. Any questions on who your market is.
And next week, we're gonna talk a lot more about this subject, so we're just kind of glossing over it quickly
Yeah, this
this
is
time, but
overview for the
next week we'll get much more into on marketing.
Okay. All right, so you've got your market, right? Now, as part of this, I kind of separated out and call the second section of the target market marketing. How are you gonna reach those people? Now that you've found who you wanna reach, how are you gonna reach them?
Advertising.
Ideas?
Advertising?
Mhm. Where, what kind?
Social media advertising, especially in this day and age.
So
If that's your market, if your market is 80-year-olds and up.
Well, good point.
The Sheffield Times. Seriously.
Yeah, so if
Yeah,
we're
'cause
talking,
that's
let's.
for my business,
Yeah.
that's local.
Because we're still brainstorming for this business, right?
Right, right, for my business.
So
So,
for this specifically like Sheffield Times and Berkshire Edge and Berkshire Record and Shopper's Guide.
Mhm. But keep in mind, that costs money. So, yeah, you might not want to do them all. You might want to see which ones your market might read more frequently.
You could also do, sorry, were you-
On top of that, you might need to hire like someone to actually make your advertisement. So it is actually appealing and people just don't look past it and be like, oh, that's corny, or, oh, I don't wanna buy anything from that, that seems like a.
You mean like a graphic designer?
Yeah,
Somebody's
no,
a graphic
not-
designer here.
Not only a graphic designer, because that would only be for like print ads, but like if you were going to do something online, most likely it would be video, because that really catches people's attention. So you need to hire someone to make your video.
Yeah, I'd love to have a video of my restaurant.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. Well, some people do hire initially as part of their budget. They'll hire people who do graphic design and they do the logo, the website. And we'll get into that too when we talk about money.
You can also find free ways to advertise. For instance, you can have people in your close community write positive reviews on various food-related sites. You can approach various local papers about perhaps reviewing your place, so you can get free press that way.
Exactly. PR, that's the best. 'Cause it's
There's
free.
a term for that potentially, it's called guerrilla marketing, and maybe your person. So, you know, here's the sort of terms you might want to sort of explore on your own or with the other person. The other thing is when you're talking about marketing, there's a technique called segmenting the market segmentation, which is really important. So that might be something that I would imagine you're going to be hearing about in the marketing piece too.
Any other ideas?
I was thinking you could offer a senior discount for certain times of the day. Ways to get people in of certain demographics who are available when it's quiet. And make events together with like, if your demographic is older, it could be events with the senior centre or events that tie up where you have other things happening besides just drinking coffee.
And wine.
And
Let's not
Don't
forget the
forget
wine.
the wine, right? Yeah, coupons.
yeah.
Local musicians with followings are great for getting a large amount of business.
That's a really good point, yeah. I hadn't thought about getting the musicians in, but as long as they're not too expensive, I'm all for that.
Well, they're cheap, they're like $100.
Oh.
It's ridiculous.
Sounds like he knows something.
Billboards locally. People wrap their cars. Have you seen any cars that are wrapped? Chocolate Springs. Every time I go by and see their truck, I want to go get chocolate. Even when I don't see their truck, I want to go get chocolate. So there's Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, of course, the social media, which is great because it's free. And especially if you have a huge following, I can, get the word out about this bar, and people will come from other areas as well to experience my coffee and my wine. But yeah, local publications are very good. A lot of people like to do an open house, when they're just opening their doors or just introducing their product. They want to do some sort of open house. So that's getting people in to experience it initially too. That's all part of the marketing. Any other ideas or questions before we move on? I'm doing this kind of fast, but I think you get the gist of it. If you don't, please let me know. So everybody understands how to go about finding out a target market and how to reach that target market.
Well, marketing I don't think is only about getting the customers in, but it's creating a face for your business. So if you want to be seen as family friendly, then you hire a good graphic designer or person that will make an advertisement that will make your business seem family friendly.
Yes, the look is important. Are you a graphic designer? No.
Elizabeth is.
Yeah, she's.
Elizabeth, okay, we're gonna hire Elizabeth. Yes,
She's
Elizabeth,
working for
logos, right? And brochures, flyers, and create the ads, and do the website, yeah.
And
You
so-
wanna have like the consistency, so people will remember you as, or me, as Sheffield Wine and Coffee Bar.
So I like what Sophia's saying also, because it's about kind of telling a story and creating your story that you're selling so that it's consistent and people know what you mean. So that would carry through all of your print and your video and your website and your experience when you walk in the door. So
Yeah.
you're kind of, your marketing is like you're telling a story.
Yeah, also the pyramid thing that you drew before, I noticed, and I have been taught that advertisements appeal to your lowest thing. Like instead of, for instance, the Galaxy, whichever is the newest one, their advertisements not only just say, hey, we have this cool new phone, but they make you feel if you get this phone, then you'll be as happy with people as in the advertisement.
What is it? A brand new what?
A phone.
Oh, the Galaxy phone.
Galaxy 6 or 5 or whatever.
Yeah, so instead of just appealing to like your want for a phone, they appeal to your want for happiness.
Mm-hmm. And we're
Oh,
gonna
that's
talk more
very
about
easy
that.
to do with wine and coffee. But look at Nike. I mean, who doesn't know the swoosh? And there's lots of companies out there that have those. The Google. Everybody knows Google.
McDonald's.
McDonald's, the arch. Yeah. So it is important to get some identifier. Is that it? Okay. The next piece is competition. That's a biggie. Do I have any competition? And if so, where? And is it direct competition? Is it exactly like what I'm offering?
Well, there are plenty of coffee shops in the Berkshires, though most don't stay open particularly late. So if you're open at night, that's good. And then there are, of course, places that serve wine better than the wine that's produced in the Berkshires. So if people want better wine, you certainly have to deal with the bars.
Mm-hmm.
Directly in Sheffield, there's Marketplace, which has coffee, pastries, sandwiches, and they're open pretty late.
Mm-hmm.
And they have bands there, and they do like the events, they'll do like movie nights and stuff.
Mhm.
So they're in direct competition.
Okay.
A big part for sort of getting, especially in the summer, large sort of people that come into the Berkshires. A lot of people will base completely where they eat at night or where they go get coffee off of online review sites. So it's important to have a sort of good profile because a lot of people don't have like the native intelligence, so they rely on like Yelp and Zagat.
Mhm. But once they're here and experience it, they'll go back. But really, other than that one place you mentioned, is anybody else doing exactly that in this area?
Well, Ruby's serves alcohol certain nights, and then of course you can still get coffee. So different town, but more people do come to Great Barrington than Sheffield.
That's the other thing, there's not, Great Barrington, there's a lot of stuff going on in Great Barrington, whereas Sheffield, there isn't too much other stuff. There aren't many, like as far as going there at night to drink wine, there's nothing else going on at night in Sheffield.
So maybe this business isn't viable after all. We'll find out, right?
Or maybe that's an opportunity, because there's.
Or maybe I need to work harder.
Especially for like, for instance, wine and coffee shops, most of those are going to tend to be locally owned. So you don't have the advantage of being a locally owned business, which can be like part of your marketing itself. Because especially people around here, they're very like, oh, I want to shop local and I want to buy local, because that's like the kind of dynamic that we have in our county.
Mhm. So you're saying that I could succeed for that reason?
Well, no, because all of your competitors will also have that.
But they won't have local wine necessarily.
Yeah,
You
I
might
mean-
have local coffee, right? So that gets to the second question. Under competition, it says, are there similar businesses nearby? And then how will you distinguish your business?
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
you might be distinguishing your wine bar from others because you're serving local wine.
But you might also be distinguishing by the atmosphere that you set, right?
Good point. That's right. My location, what the inside's gonna be like, the kind of music that I may be having, the kinds of coffee I'm gonna offer. Not only are they local, but I'm gonna make all the fancy coffees. And the wine, mostly local, but maybe not necessarily all local. And, sorry.
So what we found is that, here's a good example of what, quote, the value proposition here is. So if you define the value proposition just coffee and wine, then you might be missing out. People more and more are going to places where they want to have an experience. So when we're working with retail and or restaurants, it's important to have good food, it's important to be clear about all those things, but you need to understand the overall experience and create a certain experience. People go to places for that, and it's happening more and more, right? So one of the things, it's a secret, okay, so don't tell anybody. With restaurants, one of the things I said, you know, your fortunes could fall or rise depending upon how clean the woman's bathroom is. You can have the greatest food in the world, but if a woman goes into the bathroom and it's dirty or disgusting, guess what? They're not coming back. And this is not sexist, but when you look at the research, who do you think makes the majority of the decisions of where you go to eat? Yeah, it's true. Men in the room might not like it, but research will bear it out. So the point is that it's about, my point is that it's an experience. So Nancy is helping to facilitate you think about that. It's about the coffee and it's about the wine, but it's about some other things as well.
I know there's places that people won't go to because there's a lot of drunks that come out of it. So that's not gonna be the atmosphere in my, we'll have a limit as to how much you can drink.
Yet on a positive side, people might go someplace because it's a happening place and it's interesting and you can maybe meet some people that you'll enjoy being with.
So these are all things that you need to put in your business plan to encourage not only yourself, but the person you're also writing it to. You're writing the business plan for yourself, but also for someone else, perhaps somebody you're going to borrow money from. And you've got to make a good case for why you're going to succeed. If you can't, then you're not going to pursue this idea.
That's one of the most important things I think about this lesson, is that this is like a persuasive essay. How many people have written persuasive essays? Probably since the time you were in 5th grade or 4th grade, you've written persuasive essays. So think of this as a persuasive essay. You're writing down why your business is going to work. And so you want to include all the different points, all the different arguments for why your business is going to be a success. And of course, you want to make sure that those are correct along the way, but that's one way of thinking of it. So include, it's going to be a great place to go hang out with your friends. It's going to be a really friendly atmosphere. If you look at the, and this is something that we'll be talking about next week, but when you're thinking about your business, you probably want to think about what are the competitors, like what are similar businesses, and then go and research them and see what their website says. Do they say, we're the happening place in Sheffield, and we have the best roast beef sandwich? That's kind of how they're marketing themselves, and you want to distinguish yourself. So you can learn from your competitors is kind of my,
And actually
My
go
point.
into their shops, go into their restaurants and see what it's like, see how the help is, you know, if they're friendly, if they're service oriented, because you're gonna wanna distinguish yourself, your business from theirs. Keep in mind, there's other wine and bars and coffee shops may be competition to me, but there's other competition as well. Restaurants, they're competition. Food trucks could be competition that sell coffee. Indirect competition could be something like a liquor store. Eating at home, there's all kinds of competition. Why are they gonna come to me? How am I gonna get them to come to me instead of eating at home or going to, you know, Joe's coffee shop? Any other questions about competition? No? Okay. The team. Who are you and who are you gonna work with? Right? Who's gonna work with you? Is it just you? Well, if it's just you, you're gonna talk a little bit about yourself, not a whole resume, that you can use as an attachment later on, the addenda, I call it. Who else is helping you? Well, even if you're doing this yourself, you probably have maybe a lawyer, maybe an accountant, maybe me or Keith. So you're gonna talk a little bit about who your team is. In your case, you'll probably talk about both of you. And somebody else was doing something, Anna and somebody was
Hannah
working
and
with
Emma.
Right, so you'll probably talk about if you're the team. If you're gonna have other people working with you, talk about the other people. What's their function? What's their background? What's their experience? Okay? Initially, you may not be hiring employees, but you may talk about ultimately in 6 months or a year, you expect to hire 1 employee or 2 employees. Or you may have no employees, you may have what's called a contract worker, a contract laborer. That's somebody who's independent, they work independently, and you hire them to do a job for you, just like a contractor. Or like in my case, I'm a realtor, I'm an independent contractor, nobody pays me a salary. I make my own money, I do my own taxes.
a
Right?
graphic designer that you hire to do an
Graphic
ad for
designer.
you would be a contractor.
A contract person, right. So you can also talk about that person in when you're talking about your team. And I kind of wrap that in with skills and experience, but you should also talk about your experience and your skills. So I don't have experience in wine and coffee, but my partner does, or I'm gonna hire somebody who does, and I'm gonna be the person who goes around and makes sure everybody's happy and continually fill up their glasses. So you wanna make sure that somebody in the business has either had some experience or knowledge, so that when you're starting out, you're not, oh, I don't know how, now what do I do? I don't know how to start this business. That's why you need the skills or the team that has the skills to help you with this.
And in your case, you might be just starting off on that path, but you can say what has brought you to be interested in this, what skills you have, and you might not have everything ready to go right now when you're writing your business plan, but write down what you do have. So that could be that you're a really good public speaker, it could be that you're a really good writer, or you're a good researcher. Those are all skills that you could write down at this point. You might not know how to make coffee yet, but you could
Right.
say that I'm a really fast learner or something.
Right.
So for you guys, for your purposes, not all of you have all the skills you need to start your business that you're talking about. But write down the things that you do have.
And some of you have probably had jobs, so you've experienced working with the public, and that's important. So in the business plan, I usually tell my clients no more than 10 pages. Less is better. And I think here you suggested 5 pages.
Yep.
Because it's a lot to read, you know, and there's a lot of information. And some people, I had somebody come in with a 40-page business plan, and it was repetitive. Why it was such a great business. You don't need to say it so many times. Who's gonna read all that, right? So you wanna be To the point and succinct, and get your point across, especially if you're going for money.
Just like a persuasive essay.
Persuasive essay, and you have instead of getting an A at the end, you want to get money at the end, right? Okay. The addenda is, you've got so much information and you can't put it all into these 5 pages. Put it in the addenda. Put your resume in the addenda. I'm going to put a floor plan of my new wine and coffee shop in the addenda, and I'm going to put in pictures of what I expect it to look like in the addenda. I'm also going to put in what's called testimonials. That's where people write good things about your product or your service. So I'm going to throw that in the addenda too. Ongoing businesses or startups that already have done a little business, I recommend, hey, if you have a purchase order or you have some sort of commitment from somebody who said that they're going to buy your product or service, put a copy of that in there too. It looks good. Summarize your entire business plan in a concise way. Make sure to explain how your business meets an opportunity for import replacement. In your situation, in my situation, I am a local business and I am using local products, right? So I'm definitely going to put that in my executive summary. In my executive summary, not only am I going to give, concise repeat of what I put in these 5 pages, what I recommend that my clients do, and I'm going to recommend this to you as well, if you're looking for something from somebody who you're presenting this to, whether it's money or support or whatever, put it in there, the Sheffield Wine and Coffee Bar is looking for a investment or a loan or what have you of $20,000 for the initial startup. Put it in there so they can see right off the bat what it is that you want from them. All right, let's just talk about the startup expenses for my business.
No, it's just an evaluation.
Oh, okay.
We break down the startup expenses by categories.
Yeah, 'cause
You need to have some money to get you through until you actually start making money. So we put a figure in here for the first month, 2 months, 3 months, and then we come back and revisit it after we've done your financial projections to determine how you're going to make money, when you're going to make money. Okay, any questions on your upfront costs? Then you get the total, and that's how you know how much you need. This total is $20,000. You're going to a bank, and you say to the banker, I need $20,000, and here's why. And you've got your plan and so forth. Most likely, the banker's going to say, well, what are you going to contribute? Most banks will not give you 100%. So you've got to think about saving some money if you're going to go and ask for money. If it's for a bank, if it's family, they might just give it to you. They might lend it to you and not have the same conditions as a bank. A bank is going to want a percentage back, right? They're not going to give you the money forever. They're going to lend you the money for a period of time. So if you're going to lend you $20,000, they're probably going to want you to put in about 20%. Therefore, you're putting in $4,000 and they're going to lend you $16,000. And $16,000 is what you're going to be paying them back over a period of time. Any questions on this? It's a lot to take in.
So you have those packets, or you have those sheets in your packet, so you can come back to them later on and use them as tools so that you can start putting in numbers, and Keith's going to go over a lot more when he comes back.
Okay.
So this
Budget. This is where you project how much you expect to make, and that's based on, again, research that you've done, looking at other similar businesses, how many people are going to come and frequent your place, approximately how much money you expect to make the first month, the first year, based on your income and your expenses. You have to calculate what your expenses are going to be. Don't forget, you got to pay rent, you got to pay your suppliers, right? So even if you say, well, I made, my income was $1,000 this month, well, maybe your expenses were $1,500. Does that mean you're making money? No. So you got to keep track of both your income and your expenses.
Thank you very much for your participation in this. Please know that if you know somebody besides yourself that's looking to start a business, that's what we do. And once you fill out a short form, this is important, everybody stop for a second. Our services are free and they're confidential after you fill out a short form. Thank you very much.
Thank you.